for me, that was the more difficult period because my wife essentially entered a very deep, dark depression. And for me, I was working full-time, running a small business, getting up at night to feed my daughter 2-3 times.
Took her class too.
I didn't take a class too. And it was just, for me, it was a incredible time. It really wore me down.
So I'm just going to sort of explain what it, like to give you a sense of what this would feel like. You know, on a scale of 1 to 10, most people are probably 7, 8, kind of most days. You may get to a 5 kind of thing. Well, on the scale of 1 to 10, when I went into the mental health ward, I was sitting at around a 14. After taking that medication, I sat at a 2. And 2 is not where you want to be. And so I kept saying to the psychiatrist, this is not me, right? And I had no energy, no passion. I'm a very sort of passionate person. I was flat, zombie. Whenever I take the medication at night, it was like good night and Darren would have to do everything. It was not, I wouldn't wish this on my worst enemy. And when I was in that 2 state, I started obsessing, which I have a tendency to do, around murdering Darren, murdering Catherine, and committing suicide. And it got so bad that I'd actually phoned Darren at work. And I'd say things like, I know I'm going to do it. I'm going to have to use a pillow on you while you're sleeping because you're a bit bigger than me. So you can imagine what sleeping at night was like for him. And then he would, like if that was me, I'd be like, oh my God. But he was always very good about it. And then he would just hang up the phone and phone a friend. Or my mom, or my sister, or, somebody. And he would say to them, I think Tanya needs a little bit of help today. Can you go over there? So, until this book came out, my immediate family didn't know how bad things were for me. And, that's because that was Darren and I made a conscious decision not. I mean, people knew something was off, but they didn't know to the depth.
Which in hindsight actually was a terrible mistake. One of the points that I'm going to touch on is you need to ask for help. You really do. I don't know if it's pride or ego or shame. Or what is it about our society? If I had chest pain and I said to you, I have chest pain, you'd be like, oh, you should go to a doctor. Here, let me give you a ride. But if I tell you I'm hearing voices, people back right off and don't want to deal with it. And it's really no different. And I still to this day wish that I had handled that differently. Ask for help.
So, yes, on the helping notice, I didn't like Catherine for 10 months. Like, that's the honest to God truth. I was quite angry, and I experienced a lot of why are you so dependent on me, right? Like I barely got it together myself, and here's this baby that's completely dependent on me. And so at around 10 months, when I was dealing with my psychiatrist, he said to me, Tanya, you should really consider joining the postpartum support group at the YMCA. And I was desperate. I was looking for some validation and some girlfriends. I miss that. I'm a pretty social person. And so I went to that. And it was very validating and a very sacred space for me. So I could share some of what I was feeling, and, the ladies around the table were like nodding their heads, and we shared a box of Kleenex, and, life was good. And then we had the meeting after the meeting where we go out for coffee, it was awesome. And so I came to the realization, I want to get off this olanzapine because this is not me. And so every time I go see the psychiatrist, I would ask him to wean me off. And he was very upfront, not yet. And, if we do, we're going to wean you down. And then I got the brainy idea that I was going to not look at myself as just a physical person, but look at myself as physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. And so this was a huge turning point for me. I really started, reading lots of self-help books. I did not watch TV. To this day, I still don't watch TV because it's completely negative. I watched funny movies. I, tried going for walks, with my girlfriends. You guys will like this, I had a date with my father-in-law once a week for breakfast every week. I had coffee dates with my girlfriends, and they knew enough that they had to do it in the morning so that I'd have to get out of bed. So at this point, I wouldn't say it was psychotic anymore. It was more depression, panic, anxiety. And as I got better, Darren got worse.
I found, once we sort of got past the crisis stage and the long slow burn, as I sometimes refer to it, and I entered into my own depression. It was certainly not as deep or as dark as Tanya's, but nonetheless it was emotionally gripping, would be the word I would use. I couldn't get any, I couldn't work, I couldn't, I let my physical health go. I stopped doing all those things that I used to do. I sometimes turned to alcohol. And, not a nice place to be. I was at least smart enough to ask for help this time. I saw some counselors and things and turned it around pretty well. But
our marriage at that point was the lowest it's ever been. And we were very fortunate. We through work got an amazing psychologist who talked about our marriage being a rose garden and how you need to tend to the rose garden. And what a beautiful metaphor. So after meeting with Darren and I together and sort of hearing my story, she said to me, I think you need some personal counseling yourself. Wow, that's awesome, yeah. So she's actually on the panel. Marlene Harper was my psychologist, and I owe her a huge debt of gratitude because I think she saved me, Catherine, and Darren. And I started seeing her weekly, and that really helped. And she's a tough teacher. She made me look at my self-talk. And I also spend a lot of time looking at my beliefs. I think everyone gets their beliefs, from society, from their parents, their grandparents, this kind of stuff, right? And I spend a lot of time looking at all my beliefs, and I would hold them up, look at them, and say, are they serving me? And more often than not, they weren't. So I had to, get rid of them and reprogram. And I did a lot of internal work during this time. Catherine was born in September, and in September of the following year, I went back to work, to my job. I work at SaskTel as a market manager. And so I decided to go back to work because I needed the escape from Catherine.